In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White. I am your host, Charles King. Tonight, our guest is an attorney, an educator, an entrepreneur, and a force for legal equity in this country. She is the founder of Created Esquire Her Law, a practice built by a Black woman for Black and underrepresented communities. She is an adjunct professor at Clark Atlanta University, one of our most storied HBCUs. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Miss Sunnita Blount to the show, please.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
Hello, how are you?
I am doing well.
Well, thank you for being here. Is there anything you'd like to say to the audience before we get into the show?
Um, I think that you pretty much summed up everything for me, but I just like to tell everyone that I'm very excited to be on the show and to have a great discussion. And I was very interested in your platform and your audience. So I'm just ready to jump in and see what we can get into.
Yes, ma'am. So, what I like to do with all shows is I start with your journey, and what I call is also your life story, where I like to have the audience have the opportunity to learn a little bit more about you and who you are. And we'll start with you with calling it the woman behind Esquire, your life story and your origins. Before we talk about law firms, law school, and legal empowerment, I want to go all the way back. Where did the little girl who would one day become Sunnita Blount, Esquire, grow up? And what did that environment teach her about the world, about power, and about what she was capable of?
I want to say, oh, so first of all, I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, on the South Side. I moved to Atlanta when I began law school. And so growing up in Chicago, I'm quite sure everybody knows the dynamic of Chicago and especially years ago. And so I've always wanted to do something community related because of how I grew up, of what I saw growing up, and just that dynamic of being, you know, born and raised in an inner city. We happened to stay in a very, good neighborhood growing up, and me and my friends and family. However, everyone doesn't get that privilege. And I saw that firsthand. So, when you're a little girl growing up, you have career fairs and you have papers that you do on certain people. And just growing up, my mother and grandmother really, really instilled a lot of values in me and influenced me a lot. And they helped me with everything. And although they don't have a legal background and they're not into legal, I once I saw what that meant and what that was and how I could help my community by doing that, it's something that I always wanted to do since I was a young girl.
Oh, wow. Most people don't grow up thinking I want to be an attorney. So tell
hmm
me, what was the moment, the experience, the person, or the realization that made you say law is the path? And was it something you witnessed, something that happened to you or your family? What cracked that door open?
Sure. I did see a lot happen to some of my family members. when it comes to legal issues. And I always looked at it it didn't even stem from like major crimes or anything like that. It could have just been simple things where it was like, huh, that doesn't quite make sense, or even just watching things on television, that would happen to people in our community. And I would just be like, huh. So if we were this, it wouldn't have happened this way. But since we're not, we got this type of repercussion or consequence. So, and then I looked at my family members also, and I'm like, and I would, when you're younger, you're just soaking up things and listening to, everyone around you. But when you would hear people say certain things like, oh, they didn't have good representation, or they allowed their lawyer to influence them to do X, Y, and Z, and they didn't have the knowledge or the background to know they didn't necessarily have to do X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? So just looking at that and looking at, what would happen if we actually were able to have some type of resource or have some type of connection where we knew our rights? Simple things, because I do transactional law, I don't do criminal law. So simple things like such and such didn't know that they were signing this type of mortgage agreement, or such and such didn't know that they could file this type of bankruptcy, and now they ended up getting their property taken. And I bring those things up because I do more civil, and so I had experiences hearing about different things that happen to family and friends civilly and criminally. So I stress civilly because people don't think about, most people, I shall say, do not think about the fact that as in the legal field, we all just go right to criminal. But I always try to tell people civil law is just as important, because, like I just named the two examples of bankruptcy and mortgage, if you don't have the correct knowledge on something, you'll end up signing something and you can lose everything, your property, uh, have someone garnish your check, things like that. So those things that I saw early on growing up and as I got older impacted me a lot to want to be able to help my family, friends, and my community.
I think your screen is frozen.
I was going to ask you that because I'm like, is that my screen or?
Yeah, I think your screen is frozen.
And I don't know
So
why it's
let's,
like that.
well, hopefully that it'll correct.
Correct itself. Yeah, that's what I was hoping. Because I was like, why is it? I was going to ask you that because I can see you perfectly and everything. And I was like, why is my screen like that?
You chose to center your legal practice specifically around creators, athletes, entrepreneurs, and small business owners, people who are often overlooked by traditional law firms. Where does that impulse to serve that specific community come from? Is it personal? Is it political? Is it both?
I would say it's both. And I say that because, for example, I love to talk about NIL, because it's new, and two, because minorities and women are the most underrepresented when it comes to NIL in college sports. So if they don't have someone that can advocate for them, how will they be able to get those same deals as D1 schools or major schools that have those resources that they can bring in to their students and bring into the athletic programs? So personally, I feel close to it because, again, this is something that stems back to knowledge and resources. If you don't have that, you'll never know what you can do. I've had people, when I've given workshops and things like that, come up to me and say, well, I go to this type of school, or we don't have this and this and the third because of, funding issues, etc. And I'll tell them, well, no, there's a will, there's a way. You can always have access to something. It's just that if you don't know how to get that type of access or the connections to have it, it'll never pan out. So personally, I saw that and I didn't like the fact that we were not represented when it comes to NIL. when a lot of us carry those sports teams in college. And then two, politically, again, it went from someone, it went for something where we were reprimanded for it. And in my class at Clark, we talk a lot about how before, when it was illegal, things were stripped away from us or trophies were taken, et cetera. And then we now have it where young athletes can do these things without repercussion, to
Well,
the point.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. I'm still trying to. You can go ahead because I'm still trying to figure out this camera thing.
I was just gonna say, in talking about the NIL, and how they've exploited so many of these young black athletes from underserved communities. Where at first now you're on, and it's like they've gone from where they wasn't paying them to now they're paying them, and because they have to. But the thing that's getting me most is the fact that now the NCAA in particular is crying broke after making billions and billions of dollars from these kids that couldn't benefit from their names, but now they want to now control them by going through to the Congress, to try to get try to rein something in, as they say, is out of control. But it wasn't out of control with the exploitation of these kids and and their families and what they were not getting. So if you can, as you just think about this now, how do you go by your clients when it comes to NIL and what they have to do, and what are you telling them that's good advice for them going forward as they move to that level?
I really am trying to get this camera to work. Um, I would say that I tell them that it's all about you knowing what your
What
value
your value
is.
is.
And did that work? Let's see.
No.
It did not. No. So that was me just trying something. Um, so I always tell them you have to know what your value is. And just like you just stated, we're exploited a lot. And then now they want to come back in and change things. If you notice, every time something happens where we might benefit from it, things change.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting because it was fine when the law was passed and the court case came, and like I told you, the bigger division schools were able to benefit from it, and they're now of course, because like I told people, please don't think that they did this for the student athletes,
Right. Right.
because the schools and the NCAA are going to figure out a way to benefit from it as well, and they have. They figured out a way to still make sure that they're able to benefit financially from it. And so, um, like you said, now they want to go in and add in rules. But you shouldn't have to add in or change rules if the things were done properly to begin with. And then
Exactly.
they're adding them in when the players are standing up for themselves and saying, hey, just because I have an NIL deal, what does that mean I have to stay at this school? Might not want to stay at this school. I might want to change majors. I'm just not an athlete. But they're like, well, no, because you have this NIL deal, you have to.
Mm-hmm.
And so it bothers me because it's like, well, again, it was fine when certain people were benefiting from it and they were getting the bulk of the deals. But now, as things have progressed and it's become more popular and people have more access and knowledge about it, now it's an issue.
Well, the thing is, I'm with the NAACP, And what they were asking these young athletes, especially here in these southern states, is to please not go to these PWIs and take yourself to an HBCU, which is a much better quality of education anyway. Because what I've noticed is that since that, and I've also did a published post on this as well, is that HBCU enrollment is rolling at an all-time high. And I'm hoping that this continues more so from the athletic side, because I think these kids, whether male or female, I think they probably should be thinking more so about what's the real premise of going to college. That college experience is very important. And I think our kids that are coming from our communities should really think long and hard and really do, I think, what is a real due diligent thing in going to an HBCU.
No, I agree. And as we both stated, I think a lot of it has to do with the enticing, and they're more enticed to go to those PWIs because of those type of benefits or those type of deals when it comes to NIL. And see, that is what one of the reasons why NIL had not been around for so long, because it does promote favoritism in schools.
Right.
And like you just stated, HBCUs are obviously not going to be at the top because they don't have as much funding as the big schools. I wonder if I leave and come back. Um,
If you want to try that, I'll hold my comment until you come back.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we are trying to correct um, a technical issue that I guess Miss Sunnita has with her camera. We're trying to correct that. Um, let's give this a few more minutes, and she's back now.
Okay.
There
I
we
just
go.
had to switch devices.
Okay. Well, so what I was going to say to your last response is, what are you saying now to your clients or potential clients for NIL as to how do they feel about going to some of these PWIs, especially these schools here in the South that are not standing up for their voting rights, but they want them to come and make all this money for their schools, but they're not going to Congress or the Senate or the state Congress or Senate to say anything about their voting rights. But they
We
want
just have a lot of technical issues. You froze for a little bit.
they want to come and get some. They want them to come and get this money, but what good is the money if you can't vote?
And those are things, like I said, those are things that we have to look at within our community. And if we don't fully understand how that impacts us, then you're young. You're 17, 18 years old. We're gonna not sit here and pretend that they're the most politically astute or that they're even care about those type of things. You know what I mean? So
Right.
as a 17, 18-year-old athlete, you're just looking at who can give me the best shoe deal.
Mm-hmm.
Who is going to provide me, because some of these kids are staying in like condos and lofts and driving like $100,000 cars.
Mm-hmm.
So that's at that age, that's what they are particularly looking at. Me and you know, hey, that school is kind of iffy when it comes to your rights and things like that, and it might not be something that you're looking at now at your age,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still going to impact you, and it's going to impact your family now, your family and friends now. Do
Exactly.
you want a school that stands for that just because they can offer you a Nike deal?
Let me just, all of that. It really, makes me boil because as I think about it, and as I say, the schools can't do this, but you can have Nick Saban represent the NCAA and run up to the Congress and say, "Hey, you got to get a hold of this right now." But they can't go and say, "Why are you trying to keep these people from voting?" I mean, I still can't get that out of my mind, because that in itself says some of the really, really serious repressive thoughts that they're sending to not just the kids but to the parents. Because while the parents not realizing that and catching that and nipping that in the bud, I mean, that's just my thought process.
No,
And I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to tell folk how to raise their children or whatever have you. But I will say this: your black child affects our black community. So that's just where I'm
it's
going
the
with
same
that.
thing with the parents too. They don't know too much about NIL, and that's why why I have the program that I have, which is an NIL education program, or why I go and do workshops and presentations and things like that, because the parents also don't know. So what they don't know they can't do anything if they don't know what they know. You know what you know. And so they might know those things that we're talking about politically, obviously, because they're of that age. But when it comes to NIL, they just listen to the kids. They're like, "Oh, my child," I've heard them, because they come up to me and say, "I don't know too much about this. My child just keeps saying they want NIL. They want that." They don't even know the dynamics behind it or the rules behind it. The legal consequences or the legal repercussions if you do something wrong, because you can still have legal repercussions, as me and you just discussed, when you said, "Hey, it was cool now, but now they're going up to Congress and trying to change things." So, you know, they don't know either. And that's when the education piece come in. And that's why I was saying that, again, we don't have the capacity or the resources or the funding in HBCUs.
Right.
Which
Well, yeah, no, that's, you know, and again, that's one of those horrible things. But I just, again, I just wrote another post and story that I posted out, alluding to the growth and expansion there of the HBCUs, and with enrollment being up, and now the majority of these black kids now are deciding they're not going to these Ivy League schools; they'd rather go to an HBCU, and the numbers are up, and it's just really pleasing to, you know, just to my soul when I see that. I'm just hoping that there are a lot more students, you know, that's getting the understanding as to what this means and how important their lives are to our future generation.
I agree. You know, with all the things happening politically, you know, in the government, and, you know, like the Nolan Wells thing, you know, it's so many things that you would think we've moved past, but we haven't.
Right. Law school is one of the most rigorous, demanding, and let's be honest, often isolating experience for Black women. What was your law school experience like, and what did you have to push through, and what did you discover about yourself in the process?
Ooh. So this is going to be funny, but I discovered I have severe anxiety. And I discovered that because, as you stated, it's very isolating and it's very rigorous and it's very tedious. And I'm in school with people who have lawyers in their family, judges in their family, you know, things like that. All of us, though, we didn't grow up with those type of privileges or access. So I'm first generation attorney in my family. So that also puts pressure on you, because you're like, wait, how do they even know that? Or, you know, how did they get that internship? So it then creates more anxiety. And so I had a Black law professor, and she was like, you know, you really are mastering the information. However, when you're trying to relay it, it isn't coming out how it should. And she's the one that told me maybe you should go. We had a school counselor. She's like, maybe you should go see the counselor, and since it's, you know, you pay for it, and talk to her, and she might can help you figure out how to readjust your thinking in your brain so that you can be able to get better grades, so that you can relay the information from your brain to the paper better, because it's like, you know it, but it's jumbled. And so I always tell people that's when I discovered I had anxiety. And look, law school, medical school, doctorate programs, those things will make you discover a lot about yourself. Yes. And that is when I discovered that, and I had to then assess that in the tools, and, you know, go to the right people to get that under control in order for me to continue and to be able to excel in, you know, my program.
Oh, wow. Well, you know what? I can tell you this. Apparently, you got it. You move forward, and you're showing all that progress. That's what's important. Let's move over to your work in sports, entertainment, and business law inside the arena. Sports and entertainment law is one of the most glamorous sounding fields in all of law, but I suspect the reality is much more complex than the red carpet makes it look. Walk us through what a day in the life of a sports and entertainment attorney actually looks like. What is the real work behind the highlights?
Yes. So when that's such a good question, because I tell up and coming students, and, you know, law students, or even college students, because college students also come to, you know, grips on what they want to do, whether they want to be a sports agent, or a sports marketing agent, or a NIL analyst, or things like that. And they're seeing all these things happen in the news and the media, and you see the people on Instagram and TikTok, and, you know, and it looks so fun, because I want to do that. I want to just drive in fancy cars and go to red carpets and but it's no. um that's a cute perk, but an everyday life is completely different. I tell people, I it's a running joke I have. I'll be like, I'm just a glorified secretary because all I do, or an expensive secretary, because all I do is make phone calls, get on Zoom meetings, respond to emails, and review documents and draft documents. And literally, that's my entire day. And that's majority of my entire day every day. Now, do I have events and stuff that I go to that are fun? And yeah, but I tell people it's not glamorous. You're not at the pool. You're not on a movie set. You're not. No, you're handling the dynamics of those things. The being on a movie set, your client being an author and trying to shop their book to get a TV deal or a movie deal, or your artist going on tour or something of that nature. Yeah, you handle the dynamics behind that. So you are sitting there negotiating the deals, reviewing the contracts, making sure your client's best interest is met. Also going back and forth with opposing counsel on what we can change and what we can negotiate and things like that. But I handle a lot of intellectual property that's very detailed. You have to know the dynamics behind that because you can easily set yourself up to receive a cease and desist letter, or you can set yourself up to have a name that you've been using for years and then come to find out that someone else has already been using it and already have registered, or things of that nature. You have to be able to research that. So it's a lot. I do a lot of research. I write a lot of memos. I'm doing a lot of things that ChatGPT might not can help you.
Right.
And so I tell my students that too when they're doing their work for me. I'm like, okay, I know the school allows it, but when I go to test you or when I'm looking at participation, I expect you to know this. And that's how you're being graded. So yeah, my clients could probably use ChatGPT, but when they come to me, I'm gonna tell them, first of all, I'm gonna speak to it in a way that you can understand it. I'm gonna speak clearly, and that's why a lot of people like me because I'm very direct, I'm very clear, and I don't sugarcoat it.
Mhm.
Two, just because ChatGPT told you something doesn't mean it's correct because we know that those things are still progressing as well. And I tell my students that too. I said, are you asking Chat to give you a source of this? Are you asking it, is it even relating to the correct case that I told you to look up? Things like that. And so that's where I come in as, well, first of all, you're a professor, and then second of all, as a attorney to my clients, because I know I've had experience in this. Chat hasn't. So I've seen, okay, we can get you this, or we might not can get you this, or we have this leverage, or we don't have this leverage, So I tell people, I know you think you can use Chat GPT and glaze your way through things, and you just want to be on a streaming and on Twitch and not doing all these things, and that's all cute. But unfortunately, that is not my everyday life.
Right. Wow. I would think that, as you go through all of this in your everyday being, where you're doing all of this administrative paperwork, and you have to do that's either read contracts or maybe write contracts.
Mm-hmm.
In that whole process, can you relate? Can you tell us about how you can relate your early life
Mm-hmm.
and to now, and how you got to be so detailed as to your work and why you're so on top of your clients and growing your business the way you are?
Well, one, like I will attribute that a lot to being able to. I'm gonna go back to law school when I told you I was diagnosed with anxiety. Being able to get that under control helped me in my life in general. So that being that I got that under control, I can now detail and look at things and be more specific and also more organized with my train of thought and my daily life in general. Because if my life in general isn't going in a certain order, then I can't do that in my professional career as well. So in early life, things were like a lot of chaotic for me because my mind and everything was racing. But once I was able to control that, I now see the difference between how I was in my younger days and how I am now, and being able to compartmentalize things and say, hey, this contract is due now, or this person needs you to talk to them about IP. Prioritize, help your clients prioritize, because that's what I tell them. I said, although that's not, I said, what I do is I try to be financially feasible to my clients. So we're going to prioritize what you need now and what you'll need in the future so that we can make sure you're legally protected, but that it's also within your budget. So that has helped me a lot to be able to use tools, whether it's yoga, whether it's some type of self-care, to be able to slow down and actually see what I need to do on a day-to-day basis, especially running my own business on my own.
When an athlete, an artist, or an entertainer comes through your door for the first time, especially a young black creator or athlete who has never had legal representation before, what are the most common and most dangerous mistakes you find they have already made before they ever sit across from you?
Whew. Young athletes and creators are just excited, and I get it. I definitely get it. You are looking at other streamers, you're looking at other influencers, you're looking at other college athletes, and it all is just so, you know, enticing. And it is. But the biggest mistake is they're in a rush to get somewhere because they see other people doing it. So they're like, well, wait, if Kai Sinet or if John Blank, Deion Sanders' sons can have this deal or that deal, I want that too. So they sometimes are excited when brands reach out to them or when companies reach out to them. And because of that, and because they're in a rush to get to that status, they don't read. They don't read. They don't have the knowledge to know what they're reading if they did read it. And they are signing away life rights, or they're signing away their intellectual property, or they're signing away their likeness, or they're being lowballed and they don't even know that. But that's because they're excited to get a record deal for somebody artist, or they're excited to get a brand deal for somebody influencer, or a college athlete is excited that Gatorade wants to use them in an ad. So because of that, when they come to me, most people have come to me after they've signed away something and didn't realize it, or they didn't understand that they may have paid you X amount of money, but they are now getting it continuously as they post you, and you signed that away and allowed them to do that.
The
But
royalties.
And so, yeah, you got paid, I don't know, let's say $10,000, but they're getting way more than that because you also gave them the ability to continue to make money off your likeness without you getting anything from it.
Wow. That is so crazy. Contracts. Let's talk about contracts. The music industry alone has decades-long history of black artists signing contracts that they didn't fully understand and losing their masters, their royalties, their likeness, and sometimes their entire catalog until Prince changed that. What should every black creator, artist, or athlete know about a contract before they ever sign their name?
I would say, like I just mentioned, even when it comes to your masters and your recordings. So we focus a lot on those things, masters and publishing rights. You have to research and know what that is, because just because you own it, are you profiting from it? Because owning your masters is one thing, but knowing how to profit from it is a difference. So the second thing is, outside of that, you need to understand that as a newer artist, you might not have as much leverage as a Jay-Z or someone of that nature, or Drake or Taylor Swift. Or even with Taylor Swift, I use that in my class. It's a great example of her being able to use that clause in her contract where she was able to re-record all her albums, and then now she owns all of those masters. You know what I mean? But that was a clause in her contract. So you have to be knowledgeable enough to know how you're going to be able to utilize these masters, profit from it, the leverage you have as a new artist, and willing to negotiate and maybe give up certain things if that's what's really important to you, to own those publishing rights.
Wow. You represent entrepreneurs and small businesses in addition to athletes and entertainers.
Yes.
What do these clients have in common legally speaking, and what is the biggest misconception that small business owners have about what legal protection they actually need?
So I'll start with small business owners tend to have this thing, and I've seen it when I went out and gave presentations, sat on panels, did workshops. They'll be like, "Oh, I have an LLC," so I know I did. You know, I know I'm supposed to have LLC, and I'll be like, "Oh, but do you have a partnership agreement? Because isn't it you and your 2 other friends that are in on the business? So you have LLC, but that protects you all. But do you have a partnership agreement between you 3? Or did you trademark your name? Have you looked to make sure that someone else isn't already making that product or in that same category as you? Or your contracts with your vendors or your employees? Or do you have independent contractors versus W-2 employees? Because those are 2 different types of contracts you have to have. And they offer different protections for you and the employee. So small business owners tend to think that, oh, if I have my LLC and that's what everyone say you need to protect yourself. And I'm like, it goes way beyond that. It goes way beyond that. So the things that they have in common with my other clients in the entertainment and sports industry is, again, it's that I have this talent and I want to use it now, that I'm not sitting back and saying, hey, do I have all my ducks in a row? Or do I have everything that is needed structurally? Do I have a business bank account? Do I have an EIN? Have the right, am I in the right tax section? I don't do tax law, but things like that. But because they're thinking so much about, I don't know, opening this bakery or opening a restaurant or a food truck, or they have the talent. Well, I can cook and I know how to do this. Okay, but do you have the right licenses? Because you need certain licenses to sell food. You need certain licenses to sell alcohol. You need, just different things. Do you have a permit, zoning, different things that you're not necessarily thinking about because you're like, I just want to have a multi-billion-dollar business or a multi-million-dollar business. And I see that it's easy to open up. It's not as easy as it looks, first of all. And second of all, you are, again, so in a rush or so excited because everyone tells you how good your food is that you're like, I might as well start selling it because everybody tells me how good it is. Do you have something in place in case someone gets sick? Do you have something in place in case someone gets injured? Do you have insurance? A lot of different things that, and so that's it's that need to have it now. That's the common denominator, no matter what area I get my client from.
So you're a Black woman operating in sports and entertainment law, a field that is historically male dominated, historically white dominated, and historically resistant to both. What has it taken to carve out your seat at the table, and what have you had to fight, navigate, or flat out ignore to do this work at the level you do it?
I tell people sometimes you have to ignore the background noise. And I say that meaning all those things you just named that are supposed to be stacked against me. Sometimes you have to create your own path. And sometimes you also have to know that your path isn't the same as everyone else's. And it might not take you the same amount of time to get there as everyone else as well. So if you can block out that all that noise of I'm a black woman, I'm a black woman attorney, I'm a black woman in a male dominated field, I'm a black woman in a Caucasian dominated field. You sometimes have to look at those things instead of looking at them as obstacles. Look at those things to fuel you to progress. So I took what I know, I took my knowledge, my connections, my drive, and I carved out a way for me to engage with my community and be able to garner clients and be able to set myself apart by coming up with my name, where people hear my name and they're like, oh my God, I love that name. So that makes me stand out. Two, I'm very involved in the community, not just because I teach at Clark, but because I actually am in the community doing free presentations and giving out, free advice. It's not advice because nothing is ever, legal advice that I give out, no matter if I'm doing an interview or a panel. But when I say advice, I'm giving out certain things that you might not have access to on a day-to-day basis by me sitting on a panel and answering certain questions or maybe pointing you in the right direction. So I have had to use those things to fuel me to say, hey, just because this looks one way doesn't mean you can't do it your way. And so that's how I've taken all of those obstacles and turned them into barriers where I'm like, I can knock down this barrier because they're going to know me and be like, oh, she's doing it like this, or she's doing it like that. And I like that. Or she has a unique way of presenting this.
Well, I'm going to say kudos to you because, I mean, I want you to think about, some of the young ladies or young girls that are watching you tonight, and when they see you, I'm sure that it's inspiring to know that for this particular part of law that you're in and how it's not really something that really focuses and give women the opportunities that you have made your own path. What are some of the things, or what are some notes you can give to some young lady out here that's watching tonight as to what she can do if she too is coming into law and she may be thinking the same as you is going to entertainment law?
I would say, first of all, make sure it goes back to the original question you asked me about the glitz and the glam. Make sure you research and you really, really see, the progression of this type of law, the economics. And when I say that, I mean, how easy is it to retain a job? How competitive is it? Which city you need to stay in? Which bar you need to take? Things like that. Try to get some type of externship or internship in this field because I did that while in college and in law school. Try to make connections where you can maybe shadow someone in this field just so that you can get that hands-on knowledge, because just reading about it or studying it in school is different from actually being present and seeing what the person, man or woman, does every day in this field.
Mm.
And then once you do that, make sure that you understand that it's more to it than just entertainment. It's contracts, it's IP, it's waivers, it's meetings, it's making sure that you don't give up some type of right in your client, meaning that you missed one line in this contract and now you've put your client in some type of detrimental position. Um, it's a lot of, again, research. So just make sure that you look into it and actually understand what it is, and not just look at it from a perspective of you see entertainment lawyers on Instagram, TikTok, or some type of reality show. Know that it takes a lot of work to get here. And I've been doing this for a while. And I started off doing all types of law. And that's one of the things that people talk to me and they'll be like, you know how to do that type of law too? I say, yeah. When I started out, I didn't jump right into being able to take on these clients. I had to pay the bills, and I did a lot of different type of law, and that also helped me too. So I would give you that piece of advice too. Try out other types of law, because you might actually like criminal law. I don't, but you might like that, or some form of criminal law. It's not. It's so many different areas within each segment that you don't know what you like, and work in those areas, even if it's an internship or you're in school. So I said it to say, when I got out of college, out of law school and passed the bar, I had to work in law in areas that I did not want to, but I now have that knowledge. I know how to litigate. I know how to maybe talk to another peer in this field and bounce something off of them. I know how to maybe, if needed, if really, really needed, and someone needs me to assist them with that type of law, I can do that. So although it wasn't what I wanted, it still has given me that ability to be multifaceted when it comes to civil law. So please make sure that you do some type of research or get some type of hands-on opportunity where you can actually be in the field. I always say this. Unlike medical school, where they have residency programs and they, have them in the hospitals, I always say that we should probably do an extra year of law school to have that year be just you working in the field. Or most of us want to come out and own our own business. Owning your own business is not just knowing the law. You got to have a business background, like you said, administrative. You got to know all of that. So I always say, if we had like an extra year where we actually had a worked, or they had a law clinic where you worked in, the field, that would be very beneficial to knowing how to communicate. Some kids come out of law school and they don't even know how to communicate with clients. And that's what you do on a daily.
That is crazy.
No, or communicate with the clerk.
Oh, wow.
No, they don't. Like, they just don't. Or write an email, And so I always say, I wish we had that type of, program like medical schools do, where you
right. So let's do a deeper dive into NIL law. That's name, image, and likeness: the revolution of college sports. I know we briefly talked about that, but I want to do a deeper dive because that's still stuck in my craw. I'm sorry, and I want you to please forgive me, but it just means so much because I want to make sure to get as much out as possible. For our audience who may not be familiar, break it down from the beginning. What is NIL, name, image, and likeness, and why was the moment that the NCAA finally allowed college athletes to monetize their name, image, and likeness such a seismic shift in college sports? What changed and why did it take so long?
Okay, so we talk about this a lot because I tell people that think about how when you're a high school athlete, okay, and so you're like, oh, you're trying to decide what school to go to. You play, I don't know, let's say you play basketball, and you're like, okay, I'm weighing out my options, weighing out my, and you have recruiters coming around and looking at you and things like that. Before, when recruiters came around, they were, or agents, they were held by certain standards, and you were too, because you are in a amateur sport, as they say, compared to a professional sport, which would be the NBA. And so that meant that you had to follow certain rules, and they did too, when it came to you choosing a school and when you came to you actually playing for that school. So you were not allowed to have or discuss any type of enticements or discuss any type of privileges you might get. And I always use the example of Reggie Bush. Um, we know that his Heisman Trophy was taken away because, again, he was a college athlete, amateur sport, and they said that he was getting benefits from being a college athlete, which you cannot do. You are a student, you are in an amateur sport, and you are not to be paid. That means you could not find a loophole either to be paid, meaning someone offered you a sponsorship and you took that in lieu of payment, and now you're finding some way to be financially compensated by wearing that person's gym shoe or by drinking that person's sports drink before the game and talking about it on your social media. And so that's what happened with Reggie Bush. Fast forward, we know that they had to come back and reinstate Reggie Bush's trophy because he's still suing them, though, but that's a whole nother discussion. But they reinstated it based on the premise of now you still can't. So, and that's when I tell people why you still need people like me, or you still need to have some type of program or something. You can have these deals and still play sports, but you have to be able to still know the differences and the criteria, because it's still a certain way that the deals are structured. Your school has to know about the deals, and you have to make sure you're following the rules of your school. So what's so crazy about the NIL? Yes, now the things that Reggie Bush did is not quote unquote illegal through the NCAA. However,
Right.
the NCAA has how they have written their policies on NIL. Then states have their own way, and then the schools have their own rules. So it's very nuanced where you're like, okay, well, I'm good because I, read this. You have to make sure you're still following your school's rule and the state's rule. And that's why I say NIL is a very good thing, but it's also a hindrance because you mentioned it before. They're still finding ways to change the things or change the rules when it comes to certain things we're doing. And then it impacts us negatively.
So I want you to help me and the audience understand something. And I want to do a historical text, and I want you to please help us put this together. At least help me put this together because my mind is like really running with this, and I've got so much to write about this. So let's go back historically. And if you remember or not, you remember Ed O'Bannon when he sued the NCAA for his likeness. And I want those to remember he won his case, but was not compensated. Then you come to Reggie Bush after that, where Reggie Bush, they say, was benefiting from his likeness, and he wasn't supposed to, where they stripped the trophy. Now they give the trophy back, and he's suing them for so much money and everything, and they're trying to make this thing go away.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have the current situation where now the players, the college athletes now are able to get paid. They're able to get their little money and do what they do. They don't have to worry about, now you got to sit out a year and all this other kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And connect all of this. How does today's NCAA benefit and relate to the Ed O'Bannon situation and the Reggie Bush situation that they're now trying to change? Because it seems like to me, now I'm not a lawyer, but what it seems like to me is that all of those things have entangled them up into a real web that I don't think most attorneys are actually trying to scoop it up the way they can. But tie that in for me, please, and tell me, how does that work?
So are we comparing what happened with Reggie Bush to how the NIL?
Well, the original situation when Ed O'Bannon sued for his likeness, And
which was after Reggie was in 2015. Okay, yeah.
Before Reggie Bush. It was before Reggie Bush.
No, this was after. You know, Reggie Bush went to school in like the early 90s, I think.
Yeah, but Ed O'Bannon was like I think he was like late 80s coming into the 90s. He
played
basketball at UCLA. Okay. Well,
the case came in 2015.
Okay. The case came in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, you know, with how he sued, but he won, but wasn't compensated. But now people are being compensated going forward. And so my thing is, how does all of that tie into case law, or does it tie into case law?
Well, no, it does tie in, because what the O'Bannon case did was establish the fact that so it all goes back to likeness. So O'Bannon felt like, okay, well, hey, I'm quote unquote an amateur athlete, but you're using my likeness to make money, and I don't get anything from it because I'm an amateur athlete. So what he was saying was, years and years after graduation, he was still not getting compensated, and he's no longer an amateur athlete. But everyone else is still making money from him. Mm-hmm. So that's when he filed, you know, the class action suit, and it basically was to analyze whether the NCAA rules on amateurism illegally restrained competition by preventing athletes from being compensated, which means basically, is it illegal for you to be able to make money off of athletes, but they themselves cannot make money off their own brand? In short.
Okay.
Then so what happened was the court found, you know, in favor, obviously we know. But it then said that the schools also can come up with their own way, I guess. And that's why I said it's very nuanced, because the NCAA has rules, but the schools can also come up with their own rules regarding how their NIL programs, or how the kids are being able to receive NIL deals. And so now with Reggie Bush, he's like, well, wait, I was stripped of my Heisman Trophy because of this. And now that O'Bannon came and filed this big class action suit, you guys have now changed the rules. Because remember, the suits also allowed prior athletes to get compensated as well. And it went back so many years. So, I mean, they got checks. They probably wasn't like a huge, amount of money, but they still, receive back compensation. So Reggie was like, well, wait, not only are you making it okay, you're also sending out back compensation. So how does that now coincide to what happened to me? Because I was embarrassed, stripped of my trophy. This left a mark on my career, because when we think about Reggie Bush, that's all people really think about is the fact that, obviously he went on to play, but professionally, but they think about the fact that the whole Heisman Trophy incident. So he's like, I had to then forfeit my trophy, etc. And like I said, he's still suing them for different things, but they then obviously, since they allowed that and were allowing back pay, reinstate, because what they were doing was, at the time, again, they were saying that he was getting payout from him, and he was not supposed to be doing that as an amateur athlete. So he was not. They were saying that he should not have been getting any form of payout or compensation for his likeness.
Right.
Which then, like you said, O'Bannon argued, hey, y'all still benefit from this, and I'm not even an amateur athlete no more. I'm not even in school anymore. So y'all, He's like, wait, so y'all can still make money off me, and I'm not even at school anymore, but I
Right.
can. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
And same thing with Reggie. He's like, mm-mm. I was embarrassed and took away one of, that's a major accomplishment in college sports, and I had that taken away from me, and I earned that. So that's I guess the context of comparing how those things developed and came to where we are now, which again, I like to call the NIL landscape the Wild Wild West, because every day it's something new, because again, the rules are too ambiguous. And because they have that ambiguity, there are things that people are doing that now, when they do it, we now got to go back and be like, well, should we allow them to do that? Or can they do that? And it end up with people suing their school or suing their coach. And we've seen all these different headlines over the past few years.
So then I guess that goes to the point of law. The one thing I do understand is the person that's writing the ambiguity is the one that's held liable. So if they're writing the ambiguity, why are they not being held liable for all of this harm that they're causing?
Wouldn't that be the same as the people that control our government and things like that?
Well, yeah, I guess it is similar, but so see, I guess that kind of like just goes to just one of those points in just talking about this convolution, because just as you look at it, I mean, I think there's so much that we can do with our kids, and especially when great attorneys like yourself that set up these programs like you got, to get kids to understand. But so as you're getting kids to understand this point or parts about NIL and so forth, I mean, like, are there plans, or are you right now taking them through historical context as to how the visual should actually look for them?
Yes. So even in my class, and even when I'm speaking or giving, like you said, workshops or speaking to clients, I'm letting them know, like, yeah, it's all good and it's all fun and we've come this far. However, because the rules are ever changing, you need to pay very close attention to what you're signing and the rules of your particular program in your school and your state. Because, like you said, why aren't the people that are making those people aren't going to be held liable? You're not going to be held liable. The person that doesn't or breaks the rule, they're not going to be held liable. You are.
Right.
So I know, and we could say, oh, but I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. They're not going to accept that. Who really accepts that?
Right. The ignorance of the law is bliss.
Exactly. So I would love to be able to be like, oh, officer, I didn't, when they put a stop sign there, I still ran the stop sign. Right. Although the stop sign has not been there, and and they passed maybe the ordinance in my community 2 months ago or something, and I wasn't at the meeting or whatever, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's now there, and it doesn't matter how long it wasn't there. I ran.
It's there now.
Yeah.
So, Black athletes make up a disproportionately large percentage of the revenue-generating college sports programs. That's football and basketball. Yet, they were for decades prohibited from profiting from their own name, their own face, their own talent. Now that the door is open, are Black college athletes actually getting the legal support they need to maximize their NIL opportunities, or is there still a gap?
Nope, there is still a gap.
Tell us about that.
So, again, that is one of my major issues when it comes to NIL. I stated at the beginning of our conversation that we make up the majority of these programs and have the talent and are winning the championships or winning the tournaments, etc. And we are not benefiting the same as people opposite of us or people not in our same category, especially major PWIs versus HBCUs. And that is because, again, they have that funding and they have those alumni and booster clubs and donations coming in and programs where they're packing out the stadium, ticket sales and or they're on, TV, etc. They have all things in place, so their school can have a separate NIL education program, or they can have someone on payroll that assists the students or reviews things for the students, or have a compliance director. They have that, but those minority students do not, because as you just stated, yeah, the enrollment is up, but when they get there, they're now looking for certain things that unfortunately the schools can't offer. And it's not because they don't want to offer it. It's because they're limited on what they can offer, because they aren't getting the same backing as those bigger schools and those bigger programs. So no, that gap is still there. And that is one of the reasons why I advocate so much for women, because it's women's sports and HBCUs. And I advocate for them, and I try to get in there and give, panels or give workshops, etc., as much as I can, even down to high school, because some states, high school children, including Georgia, can benefit from NIL. So try to start as young as possible, and especially with the parents. If the parents know, then it's easier for them to obviously direct their children in the right path, or able to understand what their children are signing up for.
So let's move over and let's talk about Creative Esquire Law. You're building a legal practice with a mission. Let's talk about the name Creative Esquire Law. Esquire is the formal suffix of an attorney. Esquire transforms that suffix into something explicitly, unapologetically feminine. So that is not an accident, but what does the name mean to you, and what statement were you making when you chose it?
So a friend of mine actually helped me come up with that name when we were restructuring my business, and it fit because I had already used the name Esquire like on my social media and things like that. So when I discussed to them, like, yeah, I obviously, want to represent people in sports and entertainment, etc. And I always call myself the counselor to the creative. So then I don't even know how we put the two together, but he was like, how about Creative Esquire? Because A, you already go by Esquire because you are a female attorney, and B, you in yourself represent creatives, and creatives in any field, whether their talent stems from sports, entertainment, influencer, movie producer, actor, actress, or businesses, because you can be creative in a business field depending on the type of business you want to open. It's still your own personal talent. And so I put that together because I wanted Esquire. You're going to know that this is a woman-owned business because of the her. And then the creative part, I want you to look at it and see like, creative, really. How does that stands out? How is she setting herself apart, or what is she doing differently for her clients? And my goal is to let my clients focus on their talent, and I ensure that they're legally protected.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, because I love that. And as I was saying the name, as I was going through when I got all of your information, and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, this is creative on its own right, because it's like, unapologetically, this is female owned. Don't get it twisted. Esquire. And so would this have anything to do with, as you're getting into this field, and you know how it is compared to male female, and setting yourself apart?
Yes. I want you to know who you're meeting right off the gate. So there's no, oh, is she sending her male partner, or does she work with a male that can represent the firm? Or no, it's me, just me. And you can tell by the website, by the social media, and you're going to see that I come with all the knowledge that a male counterpart, or sometimes more, would have.
Exactly. Exactly. When were you in the process of founding Creative Herd Law? What was the moment of absolute clarity? The moment when you knew this practice needed to exist, that you were the one who had to build it, and that you would build it for the specific communities you serve.
Um, I think it was probably around a little bit after COVID. And I was, we all were going through different things due to COVID. And I was just rethinking, my trajectory and just every and anything. And I'm like, I don't know. This has set me back. I'm kind of, just over it and tired. And I was talking to my friends who are fellow business owners or who work in corporate America too, and my family, and they were just like, you've been doing this for a while already. So why deprive yourself and your potential clients of your talent? You might represent talent, but your talent is also a necessity.
Right.
And, we all know that COVID brought up so many different challenges for all of us in our personal and professional life. And it made me, rethink, and, I'm like, I feel like we're starting all over again. And it was like, and what's the problem with that? Even if you are, because now
Right.
you have the ability to build it differently, better, and take what you've learned and turn that into the catalyst to now know what you need to do differently than what you did before. And so that is how it was like maybe 2021-ish, began to build out Creative Esquire, and not just Sunnita Blount, the attorney, but I began to build out my brand.
Running your own law firm is one of the hardest things a person can do. You're simultaneously the lead attorney, the business owner, the brand manager, the rainmaker, and sometimes the janitor. What have you learned about entrepreneurship from building Creative Esquire Law that you could not have learned any other way?
You're going to have bad days and good days. And there's no way to learn that. It's just not. And it's no way to prepare for that. Because look what happened with COVID. Who was prepared for that? None of us.
Exactly.
And you have to have that willpower and that determination to know, look, these days aren't going to last forever. And you have to have the knowledge to know that it's going to be some days where that income ain't going to be the same as it was the week before, or the day before, or the month before, or the year before. And how do I, as an entrepreneur, push through? Or how do I, as an entrepreneur, keep myself going? And I have these discussions with my fellow friends that are business owners, and even my friends that work in corporate America, but they also own, their own business outside of just working a regular 9 to 5. And it's just a struggle, and everybody's not, built for it. But you have to have some type of faith. You have to have some type of ingenuity, and you're going to have to spend some money.
So the clients that Creative Her Esquire Law serves, the entrepreneurs, The athletes, the artists, the creators, the nonprofits, small businesses are often the clients that large, expensive law firms either ignore or charge too much to serve. How do you structure your practice to make a quality legal representation accessible to people who have real legal needs but not corporate budgets?
So that goes back to what I was telling you before when I said that I make sure my clients, so we go through an intake process where I need to find out where you are in your business, and then I can determine what you need from me. And so that's why I was saying that I discuss priority with my clients. So some of them will come in and they're like, again, because they're so excited and they're so in a rush, I need this, I need that, I need IP, and I need and I'll be like, okay, let's take it one step at a time. Instead of me charging you a retainer, a large retainer, or me charge you for all these things at once, I offer unbundled services, meaning that if you come to me and say, hey, can you review this contract, or can you set up my LLC, or can you do a partnership agreement for me? We're going to start with what we're going to go in an order, and we're going to start with what I feel as though you need first and what is financially feasible to you. So unlike a bigger firm where they're going to be like, okay, yeah, give me a $10,000 retainer. I'm like, no, let's start here. Pay me for this. Then you can come back, or we can do some type of combination of things, and charge you a fee for that, and then etc. Go over my billable hours and things like that. But I think that appeals more to people when they have a cost where they know, okay, I'm paying this cost and I'm getting this, instead of saying, hey, I have to give her this large amount and I may or may not have a need for her right now, but I've already given her this large amount that I maybe could have did something else with some of that money that I gave to her.
So, brand protection and trademarks, copyrights, business structure is at the heart of what you do. Can you walk our audience through a real world scenario of what happens when a Black entrepreneur, creator, or artist does not protect their brand? What does that loss actually look like in practice?
So we discuss profit and a way to make profit. When you don't protect yourself, you're losing money and you're losing your connection to assets that could potentially make you money. So if you come up with, we see it all the time on the internet when people come up with catchphrases and things like that, and people don't know that you can take that catchphrase and protect it where you can make money off of it, and people have to actually ask you permission to use that catchphrase. We saw this with LeBron and Taco Tuesday, or we see that when certain celebrities try to register their name. And I tell people, if you've been using something and it has caught on or whatever, you need to do your best to go in and protect it somehow. Because now, if you don't, we are losing recipes, we're losing money, and we're allowing other people to make money off of our culture, or off of our assets, and off of our name and image and likeness, which they shouldn't be able to.
Yep. What does the next chapter of Creative Her Esquire law look like, and where are you taking it in terms of scale, impact, reach, and the communities you serve? And what does Creative Esquire Her look like in 5 years?
So the next chapter I've been already begun, which is me being barred in different states so that I can assist more individuals. So again, I'm born and raised in Chicago, so I am looking to be barred there, and potentially New York and California, because those are also high impact states for sports and entertainment. And I'm hoping to expand, meaning that I am able to serve people in those states and actually have some type of presence in those states. And I also see me in 5 years having a very lucrative program for NIL where we're able to actually be onboarded into schools, whether they're high schools or colleges, and it actually be a program where students, administrators, brand representatives, coaches, etc., can have access to and be able to learn more about it so that they can be a resource or be knowledgeable when these things come around and when there are different changes to NIL policy. And I just see myself having that growth and having it where I am also a business that is automated, meaning, like you said, I'm the janitor, secretary, etc. I don't have to do all those things because the business is more automated and we have more staff and things that can handle those obstacles and tasks instead of me just doing.
I know you got to be doing a lot though, but kudos go out to you because you're making it work.
I'm trying.
So when we chatted, I told you we do Black History 365, and I asked you who were the most influential people in your life and career. You told me it was your grandmother and your mother. You've identified your grandmother and your mother as the most influential people in your life and career. Before we talk about the law schools or law firms, I want to honor the women who built you. So tell me about your grandmother. Who was she? What did she do? What did she carry? And what did she give you that no law school ever could?
So my grandmother, God rest her soul, was a pivotal person in my life growing up. So she is born and raised in Hollow Springs, Mississippi. And that's where she met my grandfather. He's born and raised there too. And they showed me how regular Black folk that didn't have too much moved from the South to a big city such as Chicago and were able to get a house, raise a family, get good jobs, and establish themselves in a good, at that time it was a way better areas and way better neighborhoods than they are now, and be able to ensure that their children and their children's children have access to things that they didn't. So she would always say, you can be whatever you want to be and make sure you do your work and make sure you listen to your mother and make sure you get your education because that's what's going to take you far and no one can take that from you. So I would be like, I don't want to do this or I don't want to do that. And she'd be like, no, you have to do it because you are going to make us proud once you graduate high school, college. And she knew I wanted to go to law school, although she didn't get to see that part. But she did get to see me graduate college, which that always excited her. And so it showed me that you can make it in life no matter your background, in meaning educational background, cultural background, economic background. Because like I said, they came from Hollow Springs, with, and each of them had 7, 8 brothers and sisters, and they stayed on a farm, etc. So she taught me just things that you wouldn't know. She taught me about needing insurance policies or stocks and just things that she learned because she talked to other people and she was able to get that knowledge from her coworkers and her friends, etc. And that was just something that no school could teach me, or how to treat people. Her funeral was in Chicago and Hollow Springs because everyone knew her as the person that she's gonna give to everybody. If a student or a child didn't have a shirt, she was gonna get them a shirt for school. Or if they didn't have pencils, she at the store buying all the school supplies to give to the school so all the kids to have pencils and paper and notebooks and folders. So those are things that you don't learn in school.
Right. Your grandmother's generation of black women lived in an America where the law was actively and violently used against them, where they could not vote without risking their lives, where they could not own property freely, where they had no legal recourse against racial terror. When you stand up in a courtroom or sit across from a client protecting their rights and their business, do you think about what your grandmother's relationship to the law was? What does that lineage feel like now?
Yes, that's very important to me because, as you just stated, that generation didn't have access to these types of things. So my grandmother was always so proud that I was able to speak my mind, able to make my own decisions, able to say what school I wanted to go to, what bank account I wanted to open, vote for our first black president. You know, she was always proud that she could not only see those herself, but see those things instilled in me and me being able to do that. And that's always something I tell, even when I'm talking to kids younger than me, like, vote. Stop letting people tell you not to vote. Or because we couldn't do that a long time ago. We just couldn't.
Right.
And so why would you not exercise that right that people fought and died for you to have? Or like you said, women not having those rights at all, as far as property and things like that. So the things that my grandmother had was foreign to some people. Her owning land and her knowing how to do certain things and knowing how to set up, policies for her kids and things like that. But that was because she learned and she moved to a bigger city, her and my grandfather, and they developed those skills. And so now, but I not only get to develop those skills, but I also get to have those educational opportunities that they didn't have. So I always think about that, her and our ancestors, especially when I'm met with the barrier. Because sometimes I go in those places and they don't know. I still go into places and they'll be like, "Oh, which case are you here for? What party are you?" And I'll be like, "I'm the attorney." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I've had that done by the staff and the judges. And I'll stand up and say I'm such and such, and they'll be like, "Oh, who are you again?" I'm like, "I'm the attorney." And they're like, "Oh, I didn't realize that." Well, you didn't ask everybody else that stood up before me the same question. So you still have to be on guard, and you still are faced with certain things that you think you wouldn't be faced with in this day and age, but you are.
Now tell us about your mother. What role did she play in shaping Sunnita Blount? Was she the first person who believed in you? Was she the model of what a black woman you could be? Was she the one who pushed you through the doors, even though when you didn't know you could open them? And who is she to you?
Yes. So my mom is probably the person that instilled working in me, because all my life she worked so much to make sure that I had the things that she didn't have, or just to make sure I had opportunities where I wouldn't be surprised, or I wouldn't be like shocked, or saying that I never, had that opportunity as a child to go to Disney World or go to a water park or go, just on vacation in general and be able to see outside of Chicago. And working hard. Like, she always tells me, you got your education for a reason. That means that you can do whatever it takes for you to continue to grow. So if that means you got to work harder, even though of course we all want to work smarter and not harder, but I know that through her and knowing that all my life and even now, she still takes on that task of working to make sure that she can provide for her family, and it that I was then taught that. And so now I do the same, whether it's for her or my father, grandmother, grandfather, etc. That I work because I do have that education, and I did have people that supported me, helped me financially, mentally, etc. Those same people helped me to get here. So I should be able to use that knowledge and those tools to continue to show them, look, you supported me and got me here because this is what I'm doing. And I want to continue to make you proud and show you that you did that work time. Or, I tell my students that. I'm like, your parents pay a lot of money for you to go to this school for you to sit up in my class and don't come or sleep or don't participate or fail.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So in closing, what are some words of wisdom and encouragement you'd like to leave with our audience? Tell them how to connect with you via social media, your website, all of those good things that you'd like for them to know.
Yes. So I always tell people, please follow my Instagram, which is Creative Esquire, CreativeEsquuihr. That is where I am most active, and you can learn all the things about me, meaning where I'm going to be speaking at next, what panels I'm going to be on, or what events I'm at with my clients, or what clients I am now representing, etc. And I try to drop tips on there as well, like just knowledgeable tips, whether it's about NIL, whether it's about trademarking or anything like that. And my website is www.creativeesquire.com, and we are accepting new clients. And that doesn't matter if you are a creative or influencer, a small business owner. And also, you can reach me by email at info@creativeesquire.com. And I always tell people, don't hinder yourself because you're like, well, it's an attorney. I can't afford that. I tell people, you never know what you can do or what you may be able to transact or get if you just talk to people, because I've made a lot of deals with my peers or with people based on things that they offer that I don't offer, and we're able to assist each other. So they might need something legally and I might need something, I don't know, in marketing. And so I tell people, don't hinder yourself by not reaching out because you're like, I can't afford an attorney, because you never know, I might be offering a special, or I might be able to work with you, or you might, or if you talk to me, I can tell you like, okay, this, you did this correctly, but we just need to fix this. And it might just be a small thing that I need to fix that doesn't cost that much. So don't get discouraged because you think that you can't afford an attorney.
Wow. Well, let me just tell you, I appreciate you so much for being here. And I appreciate you for really taking the time to help us to really understand more about this NIL situation, because
we can talk about NIL. We could do a whole just segment on NIL.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to get ready to close here, in the process of closing. Do you have a few minutes after the show where I can chat with you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I want to thank each and every individual that's been here on the show tonight. Thank you all for your support. And for those of you that you're not sure, please reach out to Sunnita. And you never know, as she said, there may be some things that you need, but it's always good to reach out and find out. I'm sure that after reaching out, that you'll probably get the answer that you need, and you'll also get that help and that solution that's going to make your life that much easier. For those of you that are watching on all of our channels, including our YouTube channels, if you have not yet subscribed and enabled all notifications, I ask if you would support us, please, and subscribe to our channel, enable all notifications, where every time we do a live show, you're able to get the show live, and you're also able to go back and watch our previous recorded episodes with all of our great people that have been here, that's left lots of knowledge and wisdom for our communities to grow and to be better. So in closing, Sunnita Blount Esquire, I need to take a moment before we close tonight and simply say thank you. Thank you for the depth and the specificity of everything you shared with us tonight. Thank you for making what could have been a complicated, jargon heavy conversation about the law feel like a conversation among family, because that is exactly what it was. You came here tonight not just as a sports, entertainment, and business attorney. You came as the founder of Creative Esquire Her Law, a practice that you built from the ground up for the people who needed it most, with a name that said, without apology, this was built by a woman, and it was built for all of us. You came as an adjunct professor at Clark Atlanta University, where you pour into the next generation of Black professionals every single day. You came as a champion of NIL law fighting to ensure that the young Black athletes who generate the most wealth in college sports finally have the legal protection to own a piece of what they create. And you came as a community educator who has dedicated your life to making legal power accessible to the people who need it and who deserve it and who have been denied it for so long. Tonight, on behalf of this audience, this show, and every person who watched, thank you, Sunnita. Thank you, counselor. Tonight's conversation on 3 truths that I want to carry with you when you leave this room. The first is this: when a Black woman takes the full force of the legal system, a system that was built without her in mind, that was used for generations as a weapon against her community, and turns it into a tool of liberation and protection for that very same community, that is not just impressive, that is revolutionary. That is the radical act of someone who understands that the master's tools can be dismantled, rebuilt, and repurposed. The second truth is deeper, and I felt it in every question about grandmother and mother tonight. Legal protection is not separate from the freedom that Black grandmothers and mothers fought for. It is the completion of that fight. When you trademark your business, when you copyright your creative work, when you structure your company properly and sign contracts that protect your interests, you're doing what every generation of Black people before you was legally prevented from doing. You're building something that cannot be taken. You're carrying forward the work that our ancestors began, and you are finishing it. One legal document at a time. And the third truth, the most urgent one: if you have a business, a brand, a creative gift, or a dream, you must protect it. Not tomorrow, not when you get bigger, not when you can afford it someday, now. Because right now, somewhere in this country, something you built is unprotected, and right now, the law gives you the tools to fix that. To everyone watching tonight, the entrepreneurs and the artists and athletes and the small business owners, the creators and the dreamers and the visionaries who stayed up to watch this conversation unfold, I want you to hear me clearly. The information that Sunnita Blount shared with you tonight is not free. It is priceless. It was paid for with years of law school, years of courtroom experience, years of community service, and years of building something bold enough to have a name like Creative Esquire Her, a name that announced to the world exactly who this work was for and why it mattered. But it was also paid for by the sacrifices of the women who came before her, by grandmothers who built in the dark, by mothers who pushed their children through doors they never got to walk through themselves, by generations of Black people who were told that the law was not for them and who kept building anyway, kept creating anyway, kept dreaming anyway. Sunnita Blount Esquire is the answer to their prayers, And tonight's conversation is a gift. Use it, share it, take one action, just one, before this work is out. Because you know you're right. Your rights now. You know what's possible, and there is no excuse left not to begin. Until next time, keep speaking truth, keep serving with purpose, and never forget your story is America's story. I'm Charles Zachary King, and this is America in Black and White. We will see you guys tomorrow night for another great